We're going to get started here. This is obviously Weekend's List. Before we get started at all, I just want to say this is not a dig at Weekend's tier list at all. I think, relative to the meta, he's right. I am not going to shit on his list at all. I think he's done a fantastic job of breaking this down. But I do think that with a lot of these high level or pro player tier lists, you get people recommending things like Persephone, right? Who is a brain dead god now, but she was at the top of the tier list, 3 months ago before all of her kit shifts and nerfs and changes and everything like that. And literally, you should not have been playing her unless you were a diamond or above player, right? Because she's so complicated to do correctly that I think, suggesting that a newer or even an average player play her is incorrect, right? So just starting off, SS, I agree with Kurt. I don't think anybody's like super ultra mega busted. I think you could make the argument that Aphrodite's probably up there. The only reason for that is because there's just not enough anti-heal in the game to counter her, that usually at lower levels, right? Either people underestimate her, although I will say when there's an Afro in the game, people are way more likely to buy Unks and everybody builds anti-heal. But it's still, you either have games like that where everybody builds everything, or you maybe get a divine out of the mid laner. This is for conquest. The other game modes, you can pretty much play whatever you want. It's more about comboing off your team than it is about anything else. So I agree. I don't think anybody's in SS. I am going to put Aphrodite in S+ for the average player because of how oppressive she is when people don't buy anti-heal, which is a big problem. Just to talk basically about Heimdall, Merlin, and Persephone. These are gods that are still a little bit more on the complicated side. Merlin's catching a nerf here soon. Persephone, I think, is more brain dead, but I don't think she's in a state right now where it's like must pick, must ban. Like, you have to know how to play this god. Like, I'd almost drop her into A rank because you still need to know how to play her kit well. You need to know how to take advantage of out of position players. You know how to hit your combos, all of that stuff, which honestly, I have found very few Persephones that are good at this. Heimdall's up next. I think Heimdall's kind of in the same vein. I would probably move him to A as well. The only reason I say that is because, to be really good at Heimdall, like, you got to be a really good player that's going to, use his kit effectively. I think being out of position with Heimdall is still extremely punishing. I think, if you play against a decent enough jungler, they're just going to wait till your shit's down. People doing things like auto attack canceling, using his 3 and leveraging his knock up correctly, anything like that. I do not see very many good Heimdall players. What I'm basing this off of is what I play against, right? So for every 10 Heimdalls I play against, maybe there's 1 or 2 that know how to use this kit effectively. Same thing with Persephone. Afro, I feel like you could be an absolute brain dead drooler and roll your face across the keyboard, and unless the other team's building anti-heal, like, this is just a non thing, right? Merlin, I agree with. I would probably drop him down 1 rank because the complexity of his kit means that people aren't good at utilizing it effectively. Especially more average players kind of stick to 1 or 2 of his stances that they kind of always sit in. When I started learning Merlin, it was I sit in ice and then I switch to fire if I need to burn somebody down, and that was it. So I kind of agree with that there. Moving down to the next line, Discordia, we'll start with Achilles. I completely agree with him that Achilles is S. The god is fucking busted. He's very good in a multitude of roles. Totally agree there. Discordia, I'll keep her in S. I think she's fantastic. I've been singing Discordia's praises for a long time. I don't think the alt change was something that necessarily like boosted her into the stratosphere or anything like that. I think she's always been good, especially in this low cooldown meta where you buy like Soul Gem and Deso and you just start winging out abilities. I think the key with Discordia is that most newer average players don't play her like an immobile mage. The way I play Discordia, which has been very successful for me, because you can throw her shit over walls, because you can position yourself with your team in between you and the enemy, is I play her like I play Zeus, right? Where I'm trying to fight with my team or a wall or somebody else between us, and then I don't use my 3 as an escape. I use it as a self steroid to get more 1s and 2s off. And I think if you have that same sort of mentality of like, I'm an Opwatch, or I'm a Ra, or I'm a Zeus, and you play Discordia like you're one of those immobile mages with your positioning, she is phenomenal for that. She's absolutely fucking amazing. I mean, I'll play one tonight. I slap with Discordia, and you'll never see me like truly using her escape as an escape. And I think it's a falsehood that people say that she has an escape. I don't think it just doesn't matter. Moving on, Horus, I'm going to drop down a tier. Maybe 2. I think I'm going to drop him into A. The reason for that is that, again, newer players not very good at utilizing his entire kit. Anybody can blink to somebody and knock them up in lane, playing aggressively, utilizing his ult effectively, things like that. Nobody does that well at a mid-tier level of play. So I'm going to drop him down a bit. I think, if you're an upper level player like Plat and higher, you probably can make use of Horus. But for the average person, which is somebody who's in low Plat to gold, Horus isn't something you should really look at unless you're very, very familiar with God. This is one of your mains. This is somebody you know inside out. You've watched some videos on it. You've asked Genetics how to play it, right? Like, I would not pick up Horus, especially as a first-time support. Ho Yi, same deal. Ho Yi is B tier at best for a brand new player. Lack of anti-heal, Leninger. Ho Yi, yes, he's got a great ultimate. Yes, he's got an escape. But nobody really effectively makes use of his mark or his 1. Almost all new players, nobody knows the bounces inside of the jungle. Unless you're like a Ho Yi stacker, Ho Yi is an absolute noob trap. I completely agree, right? Can you be successful with Ho Yi? I actually probably move him up a rank. Can you be successful with Ho Yi? Absolutely. At the end of the day, if you get full build online and you just ult for a Phoenix Siege or a Phoenix defense, you can do well. But playing him to the highest level of play, I think is very difficult. I think his skill floor is probably a little bit higher than some of the other hunters that are decent. And so that's why I'm gonna have him in A here. Again, this is for newer players or beginners. Cora, I don't know if you want to change the title for me real quick, just to let people know that this is like average player tier list, because I don't want to confuse anybody. I don't want people to think I'm fucking crazy. Hun Bats, I agree with Kurt here. Again, this is April 28th. I'm going to bump him down a tier because most people aren't good at auto attack canceling to begin with. He'll probably drop down to B after his nerfs that are coming out. I think they're next week. Extremely good god. I remove a tier for things like not being able to utilize their kit effectively. But again, it's kind of like Ho Yi. If all you do is blink ult, you can be successful with Hun Bats. You delete one squishy, you've done your job. Jormungandr. I think Jormungandr is exactly where he should be. I'll definitely agree with Kurt on that one. Yorm is the safest of safe picks. You could proxy with him. He's got great clear. He hits level 2 off the blue buff because he could throw his spit down on the minion wave and then go get the buff. You're almost never going to be behind on Yorm. He's got amazing clear. Like, there's just nothing bad about this god right now. Can't say enough good things. Raijin is actually, I mean, again, I want to move him up. Raijin for me, for newer players, is like the perfect mid laner. He's got self peel. He's got an interrupt. He's got a decent health pool. He does a shitload of damage. He has a leap. He's got a kit that is simple on the surface, but if you want to play it very well and really utilize it, you can. I think Raijin is a fantastic new player. Everyone using my builds is getting anti-heal. I don't know, Kurt. I saw some kids in your from your clan that were missing on their divine ruins there, bud. I do build anti-heal occasionally. I moved her up one tier, or a couple of tiers. People aren't building anti-heal. It's like the strangest thing. Not enough onks, not enough anything else. Where was I? Raijin. Okay, next up is Sobek. Sobek, I completely agree. For now, I think his nerf is going to take him down into the dog shit territory just because he's not going to be as good. There's a lot of other redeeming qualities about his kit. I think he'll still stay in solo lane just because of his sustain and mana sustain. But for right now, I agree with Kurt, even though he's a big old fucking noob. Let's see. Next up is the Morrigan. Where the fudge is she? Morrigan. Okay, so Morrigan's one of those characters where on the surface, you could play Morrigan. If everybody builds a shitload of power and a poly and a Tahuti, and you just invis and walk at people and blow one person up, then yes, you could play the gods. So, I mean, I'm probably going to stick her like middle of the pack, right? It's like any other mage, right? But for a newer or average player that is not very fluent in a lot of gods or understanding which situations require what, right? Like, do I turn into a tank? Do I turn into another mage? Do I turn into a hunter? What does my team need? Understanding that is something that people are not good at. They're very good at understanding what their role is with their god. They don't know like what the team needs at any given time or situation. So I'm going to move her down a couple of spots for that. I think if you're pretty fluent in all the gods, you've been playing for a little while, you're kind of like that upper, I would say like upper plat diamond tier, you could probably start picking Morgan up, but this is not something I would recommend for like the average player.
Welcome back, you beautiful bastard.
Thanks for the resub, Alk. Love you, bud. It's not something I would recommend for the average player. I think there's better mids that you could play to get yourself through. Would not recommend Morgan. Let's see. Thor. Don't play Thor. If you're brand new or you're like below average, don't play Thor. Thor, you need to know what the hell you're doing with Thor. One bad global ult or rotation and you don't know his combo, you don't know how to secure kills, you're not keeping track of beads or timers. He is a fantastic god at the top end of play. No question about it. He's picked in every SPL game. He's not at a point where they're going to start or where they've nerfed him into the ground because of how often he's picked. But if you don't know what you're doing on Thor, you're probably going to feed. I see more bad Thors than I do good Thors. Absolutely. Ullr is kind of in the same vein. I think with Ullr, like he's one of those gods where he's like Yanis or like Vulcan or gods like that. I'll probably give him an A. Where he's fun to play, he's fun to fuck around on, but most people aren't good at him. That's not, he's very good. He's strong and competitive right now. He's got good clear. He's got good early aggression and pressure, but most people don't know how to abuse that. Most people are really bad at stance switching gods if they're new. So I'm going to bump him down a couple of tiers for that one. And we'll move on. But down to the A+ category, on her, I think on her probably deserves to drop a rank just because like almost he probably just deserves to like stick an A, right? Like if you think about it, like having early clear and early pressure means you're not going to be forced under your tower. You're not going to fall behind, but he's an early game god. You got to abuse the shit out of your enemy in order to play him. You got to understand your combos. You got to hit your pins. Like I'm not good at hitting my pillar pins, right? I mean, I don't know what my problem is, but to use him at the high end of play and really effectively, he is a strong god and definitely in the A+ territory, but he is not for a newer player. I think you get by on him in his early clear and your ability to just W key and ult somebody in the early game, but I wouldn't recommend him out of the gate for somebody who's like learning the lane. All right, next we did Afro Ardio. I like Ardio. I think Ardio's probably in the A tier range for newer players. She's got 6 abilities, so knowing what to use when is kind of a I'm not calling people dumb, but knowing what's really effective when, like, do I stun and then I cripple and then I'm gonna use my root and all that stuff. The more abilities you add to the equation, the harder it is for people to pick up and master. She's very safe. She's got a good heal. She's got a good CC. I would stick her in A just for that reason. What else about Ardio? Do I think she's great? No. I mean, I think she shuts down a lot of these more mobile characters with her cripple, but unless you're really effective at utilizing that, I don't think she's anything to write home about. Athena, I completely agree with Athena being up here. Athena's one of those gods I recommend to new players in the support role because She's very strong right now. She's good setup. She's always good for burning beads, which allows your junglers who, if you look at some of the other names on here, like Hunbats, Daji, if you're the one burning the beads, they can gank more effectively. But the big thing about Athena, especially for newer players, is that she is extremely good at compensating for new players' lack of awareness when it comes to map rotations, right? New players are very bad at being in the right place at the right time, especially in the support role. I got 2 questions today of when do I rotate? How often do I go to my side lanes? Should I try and stop ganks? 2 people have DM'd me today asking about those exact things. Athena is the kind of god where if you don't know those answers, you can get to those team fights much more quickly. She's a phenomenal god to that for that. It makes up for a lot of mistakes that learning supports make. So I definitely agree that she belongs in the A+ territory. Awilix, I'm tempted to shove her in D because I fucking hate that god. But, I mean, I'll give her an A rank. Pretty easy to learn. Decent mobility. She counters a lot of these gods with leaps. I think to master her, I'd probably bump her down a rank just because of that. But she's good. Camazot's the bat. Totally agree. A+. Fantastic solo laner. Phenomenal sustain. Out-sustains pretty much everybody except Arthur with a Glad Shield. But even then, he's pretty much on par. Agree there. Kukulkan, same thing. I think rage management is something that newer players don't do well. But I think you can learn that pretty quickly. He's kind of a bully. His transform is really strong. He's effective in the late game. Understanding the rage isn't exactly like the hardest thing in the world. So, I don't think I would knock him for that. The fact that he's not as punished if you get your blue buff invaded is also extremely good. So I think that's actually a positive in his corner for newer players, where some of these gods you'll see in solo lane, if they get their blue invaded, like if you're Wukong and you get your blue invaded, like you're done. Like you don't clear, you get shoved under a tower. It's super punishing. Or any of the guardians except Sobek. If you don't get your blue, you're totally toast. Next up, Daji. I'd probably drop her to A. Just because she's a lot of auto attack canceling. You got to hit her ult. She's kind of all or nothing. You either leap in or you don't. Or you blink in and then you leap out. Understanding how to utilize her effectively, I'd probably just drop her a rank for that. But again, she's great into these beads burning comps. She's strong right now. Not overly oppressive, but I still think she's a good character. Fafnir up next. Don't play Fafnir. I'm putting him in B. If you can't hit your hammers, you are useless to your fucking team. Completely useless. You don't peel well. You don't engage well. Nothing goes well if you play Fafnir and you can't hit your ones. And your threes too, that's an even more wonky ability. Don't play Fafnir if you're new. There's better gods out there. I wouldn't pick him up at all. All right, next up is Geb. Geb actually goes up a rank for me out of A+ into S. I think he's strong in A+, but I would rank him very high on the list of newer or average player friendly gods. Kit's easy to understand. You can't miss anything. Hitting the shields the right way and using them to cleanse, I think, is something that's learned over time. But it's not super punishing if you don't know how to do that. Hebo, I'm not sure if he put Hebo here because of mid or jungle. I'll probably just leave him right in A. I think he's a solid god. You got to know your positioning pretty well, but ultimately it's kind of like, it's like the Morrigan, right? Where if all you do is blink in and ult the shit out of somebody and they die, then you're fine, right? Up next, Hell. I'll probably leave her in A tier as well. Stance switchers, knowing when to effectively manage your stances, which abilities are good when to cleanse. Hitting those, I'll drop her a tier for that. But all in all, I mean, she's a solid god. Even if you just sit there, you build a bunch of MP5 and you spam your abilities with cooldown, you're fine. She is pretty brain dead. She can be played brain dead and do well, or you could kind of see her at the top level of play where people are, hitting their cleanses really effectively and understanding really how to maximize her kit. Just dropping her a rank just because there's some complexity to the way that she's played. Hercules, I agree. A+. No problems there. Jingwei, if we're talking average or newer or beginner players, Jingwei is up here. If you are a new ADC, play Jingwei. Like straight up. Like that's it. Play Jingwei, build a bunch of crit and an executioner, and just farm. And power farm, and don't rotate until you get 4 items online, and you will just melt the shit out of everybody. Don't worry about hitting your one. Don't worry about clearing the wave. Don't worry about falling behind. You go to lane. If you get pressed out or if you have time between waves, you back. You fly to the back camps on your side of the map and duo lane. You clear those. You go back to wave. You clear under tower, and you wait until the late game. You call when your lane opponent's missing. You cannot fuck Jingwei up at all. She's one of the best gods for brand new ADCs, and has been for a really long time because of how safe she is. All right, moving on. Capri. I love me some Capri. I'll put him in A+. I agree there. I think people being really good about knowing when to ult is kind of rare. His kit's really easy to hit, and he's super effective if you don't want to engage and you just want to play passively and help your team out. Who's up? King Arthur, D tier. Do not play King Arthur if you are a newer average player. You are going to fuck this up. The biggest mistake that King Arthur players make is they get their Glad Shield online, they spend 10 minutes jerking off the enemy solo laner, and then they rotate to a team fight. They're not as tanky as they think they are, and they get obliterated, and they cost their team multiple team fights because they want to just W key at people. Don't play Arthur, please, for the love of God. I know it's King Arthur. I know he's a lot of fun. I know you fidget spin, but don't play Arthur. Kukulkan, I'm actually going to move him up a rank because he's brain dead and he's really easy to play. I agree there. Kumba. Let's see. Kumba, I agree with. An A+. Easy to play. Build a bunch of cooldown. Play Kumba. Kuzenbo, same thing. He's annoying no matter what you do. Nisha, I'm actually going to drop 2 ranks down from A+ to B. He's kind of in the Thor territory where if you don't know how to play him well, you are going to screw everything up. And you're gonna fuck your team up for a lot of team fights. Nisha is one of those gods where you have to know exactly how risky you are when you're using your sash and when you're using your ult. Because if you sash into the wrong fight or if you ult into the wrong fight, you're dead and you cost your team unless you take somebody else with you. Which, I mean, realistically is not that easy to figure out. On the surface, he's a brain dead god. Sash, ult, throw your rings. 3 skill shots. You know, is that the best thing for newer average players? If you figure an average player probably misses like 30% of their abilities, it's super punishing if you miss any of those with Nisha. Next up, who we got? Odin. Odin's brain dead. He belongs in A+. I completely agree here. Anybody can play that god. No problem. Pele, I'm moving up a rank to S tier. I think she's fantastic. I want to put her in S+, but she's not like overly oppressive. She's a great god. She's easy to learn. She's easy to pick up. Her kit makes sense. She has an escape, CC immune, good CC, good chase. Does a shitload of damage. Even if you build her a little hybrid when you're diving, play Pele, you'll do well. Poseidon is up next. I agree. Put him in A tier or A+. Sorry. Great god. Good cripple. Good ult for secure. He's got mobility. Agree there. Ravana, I'm actually going to move up. He's strong in the A+ category, but he's one of the best new junglers or junglers for new people. He's got 2 forms of CC immunity. He's got an escape or chase. He's got lockdown. He's got slows. He's got low cooldown, so it's less punishing. If you miss some of your abilities, he's great. Yuyul, the reason I have her up there is because I think people play too aggressively with her, or they think they are better than they are with her, and they like to ult into fights with her. But if you're just trying to hold on and lane well, she's good for that. I don't think you're going to be carrying your team if you're an average player and you're new to the ADC role, but she's still a good god. All right. Moving right along. Scylla. Yeah. I think people are bad at hitting her ult, and they aren't good at using her ult effectively, but I think she's a good god. Surkhet, I'm dropping 2 ranks down into the B+, like Thor Nisha territory. You got to hit her shit. Her kit's kind of complicated to manage correctly and make sure you get the most out of her passive and everything like that. Again, I wouldn't play Surkhet if you're a newer player. Let's see. Wukong, I agree. I think he's a phenomenal solo laner, especially for new players. Let's see who's next. Terra. Terra's an interesting one. I think, you know, I'm gonna move her into the A category where, like, if you know what you're doing on her, like, you could be good if you're an average player, but I'm only knocking her for that. I think if you're like a true noob and you're new to Terra, a lot of people just spam the shit out of her abilities for no reason, and it you know, kind of costs. Her ult super forgiving. Yeah, she's a decent god. I think that's really all there is to say. Next up, Tyr. Stance switcher, kind of complicated. Still think he's good. He's got good sustain. He's got an escape. You can do well on Tyr, even at a base level. I'm gonna put him down with like the Hells and Rulers of the world. Next up, Vamana. I agree here on Vamana. A+, super good in lane. He is decent sustain is all. He's got an escape. He's got decent wave clear. Good god to play. Shibalanki, same thing. A+, global ultimate. You can affect the team fight anywhere. Great god. Jing Shan. Jing Shan's going up in S tier. Jing Shan is a top tier support right now, especially for somebody who's new to the role or like an average player. I think he's really good. He's got mobility. He's got a great team fight ultimate. He burns beads. If you know what you're doing with his one, you can be really effective. I think he's an awesome god for people to play. Yamoja, I'm going to drop her down a rank just because using her really effectively is hard. But if you just sit there and spam your stuns, she's still a good god. That's where I would put her. King Arthur D tier. It's for the average player, which, if you don't believe me, go look at his global win rate. I think he's dead last. Down into A tier on Kurt's list here. Let's see here. Who's up first? Baron? Where's Baron? There he is. Or no, Agni. Duh. Agree on Agni. Agree on AMC. Pwatch is definitely down in B tier. I agree with that. Ama, I agree with. I mean, these are all gods where, like, if you know what you're doing, you can play them. Apollo, I think he's probably a little bit better for a newer player just because of his global ultimate. You can kind of use that to abuse some rotations. Ares, I'm going into B+. I've seen a lot of Ares players recently that are not good. They can't hit their chains. They don't know when to ult. Who's up next? Bacchus, I'm going to put down here. You know, landing your flops is kind of crucial. Yeah, he's like an okay god. I wouldn't, you know, he's nothing to write home about. Baron, I agree. Actually, Baron I'm putting down here with Upwatch. I don't think he's that good at all. Bologna, I'm going to drop down at B+. I think she needs some buffs. She needs some love. I don't really think she's that great. I haven't seen too many of them lately. Also, Baba. I don't like Baba at all. I think Baba needs a lot of work. We'll see after this latest round of buffs, but I think Baba's garbage. Caprican, I'll give him A tier. I haven't seen too many people be effective with him lately. Cerberus, I think, is an underpicked god. Like, straight up. Like, this god should be higher. But, you know, just because of all the healing that's out there. But I'm so confused as to why we don't see him in the solo lane. I should probably ask Ducky about that. Kernanos, I agree. Chernabog, I agree. Really easy gods to play. Chiron, I agree. Who else we got here? Cupid. I think Cupid's a little underpicked. Freya. I think Freya's a little worse than Kurt's letting on here. So I'm going to move her to B+. Ganesh, I actually think is probably in the A+ category for newer player, or the A category for newer players. Ganesh is easy to play. Sorry, A+. Ganesh is easy to play. Like, I mean, at a minimum, if you just silence the shit out of people, Ganesh is just a simple god. So I would move him up one for newer players. Let's see. Hachi, I'm going to A+ just because of how safe he is. Again, he's like Jingwei. You just sit in lane, you farm, you use your escapes. You got 2 of them to stay alive. You rotate to team fights after you got 4 items built. You're good to go. Hades, Yeah, I'd put him in A. I think newer players are bad at punishing him when he ults. Hera, I'll probably drop down a rank here to B+, just because if you're out of position with her, it's really, really bad. Her self-peel is okay. They did well with her in the SPL today, but again, for a newer player, I don't think she's very good. She gets punished a lot when you're out of position. Isis, I agree. Yanis. Okay, Yanis, where the fuck is he? Yanis, D tier. Do not play Yanis if you're a new player. You're going to feed. Do not play Yanis if you're an experienced player. You're going to feed. Unless you know what the fuck you're doing with this god, you're going to feed. You are not going to have any damage. You are not going to play well. Yanis is a difficult god. He is in the bottom like 8 for lowest win rate, even at high diamond levels. He's fun to play, right? But he's not, you're not good at him. No matter what you think, you are not good at Yanis. Period. Medusa. Medusa I actually would rate higher for newer players than A. But I'm going to put her there just because she's safe. She's easy. Her kit's easy to understand. Mercury in A, but the only reason I think he's not higher is because people aren't really good at managing his early game where he really just needs to power farm before he gets his items online. Mulan, after her buffs, is she even on here? After her buffs, I mean, I probably would have put her lower. She's kind of one of those guys where even after her buffs, newer players are really bad at playing her. I see it's either feast or famine with Mulan. They're either really good at her or they get fucking farmed. You know, I wouldn't do it. There are better solo laners you could play. You can play Mulan. But I mean, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it at all. Neath, decent enough in A tier. I think people mostly build her mage style, so it's a little weird for Conquest because it's like, you know, who's going to chunk the towers, but I think she's decently good. Knox, we're going to drop down to B+. Same thing. Complicated kit. Very punishing if you don't land her abilities. Good god if you could play her, but for the most part, if you're new or average, you miss 30 to 40% of your shit on her, and it's super punishing for your team. Nuwa, B tier. Don't play Nuwa. You're not good at Nuwa. She's like Vulcan. She's like fucking Yanis. Not as bad as Yanis, but most new players don't manage your passive correctly. They blow up the minions, but they don't hit the enemy with the shining metal. Don't play Nuwa. You're probably not good at her. Same thing with Olorin. Oh, let's see. Osiris. I think Osiris is strongly in the middle of the pack. He can bully lane well if you know what you're doing. He's kind of safe. He could be effective late game in team fights. Yeah, I think he's a decent enough god. Are there better picks out there? Yeah, if you're a decent Osiris player, play him. Ra, I'm going to drop a rank. Maybe 2, actually, just because positioning is generally new players' weak points. And where do I set up? And it's really punishing on gods that don't have a ton of self-peel. I mean, yeah, he's got his blind, but for the most part, he's kind of an immobile mage, right? Rama, I actually think is going to see a lift after his passive change. I think he's going to be extremely strong. I expect we'll see him in A+ after those changes that are coming out. Rat is good. He's kind of like an easier Thor to play. The same reasons for Athena, where you got these global rotations. If you're late to a team fight, he's got good early game, so you're not going to get bullied out or invaded if you play him correctly. He's a decent enough god. All right. Next up is Set. Don't play Set. Set's complicated. Don't do it. I put him in D tier. You can't see it, but because I can't scroll down far enough. But Set's in D tier. Don't play Set if you're a new player. Scotty, I agree with an A tier. Soul, I agree with an A tier. Both are, you know, Scotty's not safe, but she's easy to understand. People don't really abuse her when she's in lane. Susano in A tier. Yeah, I'll leave him in A tier here on the Susano. The only reason I'm going to keep him here is because if you just build full power and you get one big ultimate off late game on a team fight, you're going to yeet the shit out of the enemy team. You'll half health the entire team. If you have a Titan's Bane and a whole shitload of power and a Heartseeker, you're going to knock out half the HP of all the carries and maybe 20 to 30% of the tanks, and you've hit a knockup, and your team now has the ability to punish them for that. Good God for that. If you play him, if you do not do any of the auto attack canceling, Susano still is strong, in my opinion. Let's see. Sylvanas in A tier, I agree with. You know, as long as you learn that you throw the root and then hit the pull, and then you ult, when you're a new Sylvanas, as long as you learn that fact, you could be good with him. I think A tier is fine there. Thanatos is going up. We're going to A+ with him. Strong early game, easy to understand, easy to punish noobs. Total pub stomper, decent god. Go for it. Thoth, we're dropping down to B, maybe even C. Yeah, I would go C. He's not a strong god to begin with, and most people aren't good at utilizing his kit. Kind of like Vulcan. I'm gonna drop Vulcan too. Vulcan's in C too. I know my big ass head is covering a bunch of my list, but I'll reveal it here at the end. Let's see. Bastet, I agree with in B+. Shock, I agree. Actually, Shock is probably an A tier for newer players. He plays the lane really well, which is what a lot of people struggle with. He could be effective late game in team fights, so I would put him there. Chunga, yeah, I agree in B+. She's all right. Erlang, I think, is a sleeper. I wouldn't play him if you're a newer player, you know, strongly in B or B+, but I think he's a sleeper jungle pick. Fenrir, I agree with it, B+. Nem, I would almost move down to like B. I don't think many newer players are good with Nem at all. Nike, I agree with in B+. Her kit's easy to understand. Are people good with her? No, but you know, she's pretty simple. New, beginner, average is really what this is for, right? Like if you're not like solidly in high plat or above, like you're a learning player, like big time. And that's like the whole gap that I'm talking about here, right? And you know, whether you play ranked or not is a moot point. But if you don't have a mastery on every one of the gods, if you don't understand the interactions, if you don't understand what god, like, is my god a beads burning god? Am I a dive god? Am I a peel god, right? If you don't have that all figured out fully for every one of these gods, then you're a new or learning player in my mind, right? You know, that's just how my brain works. So we finished on Nike. So Ymir is next. I'm actually going to move him down a couple of tiers. He's highly immobile. He's in B right now. Ymir is simple to understand, but he's highly punishable. And I've never really seen a newer Ymir play well or an average Ymir play well. They always play like dog shit. And there's so many other good picks out there. Like, I'm almost doing this to like dissuade newer players from playing him, because there's so many other good things that you can play that do better for your team than Ymir. We'll see where he is after the buffs, but you know, for right now, nah. Yeah, Nike, she's not that strong though, right? She's easy, but she's not strong. That's the other thing. Bump it down a tier. B tier. Opwatch, I agree. Anubis, I agree. Ao Kwong, fucking D. Don't play him if you're new. Arachne, I'm putting her up in like A+. She's a pub stomper. You could play the shit out of that god and just frag everybody. Artemis, I agree in B tier. Bakasura, I agree in B tier. Guan, I'll move him up to B+, just because people don't buy anti-healing, and I know Alkalyph King will yell at me if I don't put Guan up there. Izanami is A+ for newer or learning players, especially if you are relatively new to the ADC role. Her clear is insane. She has an escape, and she's one of those guys where you could literally send her to the tower for 20 minutes and just let people know when your ADC is missing, and she can still perform in the late game. Easy to understand. You know, you're never going to get bullied out. I would definitely play Izanami if I'm learning. Kali, yeah, Kali's probably in the B+ category. If you know what you're doing, she's all right. But to play her well, you got to really know what the hell you're doing. Zeus in B, definitely. Loki, I think, is D tier. You know, his rework's coming up, so we'll see. But I just wouldn't play Loki in the jungle. I wouldn't play him in the soul lane. It fucks your whole team. Zhang, I agree with in C. And where did he put Kronos? Oh, he had Kronos in A? I wouldn't play Kronos if I were a newer learning player. All right, so we'll close that out. So here it is, guys. Move it over a little bit. This is, for all intents and purposes, my tier list for learning and average players, right? So this is a combination of they're strong right now, their kits are easy to understand and execute on, even at like a base level. They're very safe, right? So you're not going to cost your team, right? So I look at like the difference between like Artemis and Jingwei, right? Like if I don't know how to play Artemis, I will cost my team the game. I will feed the shit out of whoever's in lane with me. I cannot maintain or keep up in levels, and I'm going to cost the enemy. I'm going to cost my team the game. If I'm up against an Uller and I'm Artemis and I feed him 5 kills, the game is over. For sure. So I mean, you know, again, if you're newer learning, this is what I would say. I would say most of you are learning, whether or not you think you are. This we're talking like platinum, mid plat and below. These are the gods I would play. Let me know what you guys think. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit me up in the comments. You're probably going to disagree with this whole list and say that everybody who's new at the game is really good at auto attack canceling. So Susano should be up an A+. But the reality of it is that most of you watching this, including myself, are not nearly as good as you think you are. So this is a more grounded and non-pro player view of where a lot of these guys sit relative to the average skill of the average player. Anyway, hope you guys like it. We'll discuss in chat here in a second, and see you in the next video.